the step down's a no-brainer. It'll just be way better in a gold SUP, Sport Utility Pre-Runner. This is our Truggy Project. This is a old Armor Craft Truggy, it's 13 years old. So add the math there and that's what it is. This is a solid Truggy. Obviously that terminology, like a lot of people are familiar with the Landshark, the Terrible Herbst Truggy, which was maybe the most winningest off-road vehicle ever. It dominated Class 1, dominated Baja 1000 overalls multiple years. I have a sweet spot for these things. There's something about a Truggy that's cool. It's trophy truck-ish, it's buggy-ish, tube chassis, no body, just skins and like wide open raw, like just a utility vehicle. This is Justin's. He's kind of a San Diego area guy. This thing does a lot of Ocotillo, a lot of Glamis. It's been rolled multiple times. 427 LS, turbo 400. Still has an old 9-inch. Like I said, it's an older car, but when you get in this thing, it's amazing. It doesn't feel like it's used and worn. It just feels like it's fully broken in, like it feels perfect. Everything, all the systems go, it wants to start, wants to idle, the shifting, like it's just, everything is just fully gone through perfectly. What we're doing to this thing, the first phase of this is it came already with all original skins. So starting at the rear portion of the chassis, 1 panel, 2 panel, 3 panel, 4 panel, 5 panel, 6 panel, 7 panel. So we are going to completely reskin it. The thing that it had originally with this is it was just that the panels weren't a panel where it, like the edges roll. So they were built almost under the center line of the tube. They weren't under tangent, but they were kind of just resting right on the center line of the crest of the tube. What we want to do is make them like proper panels where they roll the edges, they're spring loaded. The ones all in the interior space were covered in Dynamat. These had some like padding on the tube, and I think it's just because the panels weren't tight. That rolled edge kind of gives you a Zeus button itself is a plate, a spring, and then the button, which is a tension quarter turn fastener. So this thing, if you do them right, they hold to the chassis, and that's the purpose of them. They don't vibrate, they don't move around. So what we're gonna do is still use most of the tabs here, and then just do them the right way where they kind of saddle themselves on the chassis, and also consolidate some of the quantity of panels. So like I said, there was 1, 2 here. I'd like to make this just 1. There was 1, 2 here. So if you kind of just look at the geometric shapes, they were very divided. So I'd like to make this one, so it'll just be 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5. The other thing too is adding like bead roll. So they were just flat panels. They didn't have any kind of step roll or any kind of shape into the bead roll. Or any bead roll at all, let's say. So that's something where this is an older car and it doesn't look terrible right now, but there's a way where we can like give this thing a refresh, where we can make it a different car and just update it. And that's the whole thing Justin wants us to do, is just do it a big update. So I'm just talking about phase 1. There's 2 more phases here that we'll cover, and then we'll recap once this is done, just skinned, and then we'll go into what the next phase is going to be. I was getting at with the updating is the bead roll stuff. You can do it traditionally where you kind of just run the perimeter, very generic, typical radius is, but there's an extra design element there that you can really capitalize on if you do it right. So what we want to do is kind of lay out a really nice bead rolled design that's not just functional, but it's stylized to kind of help the car out and complement the car and complement the features of the car, and also pop some mesh panels in, like you know, ventilation panels. So we do have cooling back here, we have shocks back here, so it would be really nice to kind of accent that with stainless like wire mesh. So we'll probably do a cutout in here and a cutout in here, and then I'm thinking we do there's like a firewall that's a divider for like the footwell areas that's steel, actually, I don't know why, and then there's headers. So it would be nice to have this panel have some mesh cutout. After we do the cutouts, I want to also incorporate some indexing on the panels, and what I mean by the indexing is I'd like to have some like overlap. So especially like on an A-pillar tube like this, instead of having a panel just kind of run right up to it, where if you have bushes or anything else that could kind of start peeling this off or getting gravel or dirt or sand in here, I'd rather have this panel start to overlap on here and maybe just pick up on these buttons. Same with back here, like you'd call it modular panels, where things would have overlap and they'd make sense. Like I'd want this panel to come off before this panel, because you're gonna need to access the engine, the accessories, the headers, all that stuff in there before you need to access, well, the airbox is kind of something, but the foot controls, especially on that side, is you're not gonna need to service that as much. Same with this area, I'd like this panel to come off first, so you can get to the shocks, you can get to the reservoirs, nitrogen, fuel, fuel filter, fuel pumps. That seems optimal. So that's gonna be the plan. We're gonna start with some sketching, digital sketching. Projects like this will go into the computer, take pictures, sketch over them, find out design and layout and what's optimal. That gives me the opportunity to look at this from a different perspective. Instead of just working next to a vehicle where you're 5 feet away or 10 feet away, when you're making big adjustments on like you call it a graphic, the side of the car that's the graphic, you can easily shit the bed just working close to it and think, oh, it's cool, it looks really good. And then you see that thing 100 yards out or 50 yards out or anything like that, and the lines you made don't look right and they don't flow the same way that you felt they were going to flow when you were working up close. So being able to put this, take some side shots, put it in the computer, and then zoom out and look at it as a little tiny thing gives me the opportunity to get the design and the layout exactly how we want it, where it's going to vibe right and give us the best chance to getting the most optimal design. Another thing with the digital design aspect is I can run through a bunch of options and kind of deal with the client and see what he likes, what he doesn't like. If I do 4 examples of this thing, he might say, well, this looks pretty good, and I don't know if I like that one on drawing 1, but drawing 2, that one looked good, and drawing 3, that one was nice, and drawing 1, I really like the rear and the front. And then I can kind of take those and adjust them, just like I would drawing a dash or you know, do a back half on a truck. Same thing, you get really quick adjustment and you get a design process instead of just an execution of fabrication and a possible bed shitting experience. All right, she's outside. Phase 1 is pretty much done on this thing. I do have the woven wire mesh to put in here. I want to kind of wait till we have everything done because there might be other areas that get that. I'd rather just do it all at once. The same thing with like the hardware locations, the mounting holes on all the mesh and the screen. Sometimes I've made the mistake, like obviously there's a tube going through here. There's another chassis tube going through here. And it's not bad to have those, but what happens is if you lay out a nice grid system on a table for where your mesh is going to be held to the panel, and you don't compensate for where these chassis tubes is, sometimes you'll have like a hardware hole right there and you're like, shit, and there's no way that you'll be able to pull that off. So for myself, I've done that more than once where it's a mistake, and it's kind of been beat into me now to not do that. So put it back on the car. And another benefit from that too is you get to do a really nice grid layout where just the details of figuring out where that hardware goes and kind of drawing through and being able to spread that in a way that not only functionally holds the panel the best and avoids the tubes, but also looks perfect for the application. This is our design we went with. We already kind of looked at this before and based all the process off of it, but it's cool to kind of see it out here. I'd like to see the mesh in it, and then we're gonna also talk about the next phase. There's a couple areas that need to be revised. Just when everything's on here and finalized, I will like detail this thing out to where it needs to be. Like there's a little bit of a gappage going on here that needs to have like a fit. I don't want to expose, there's a lot of these tubes, these chassis tubes that come through like this. It's one way to build a car. It's not really my preference, but there's a lot of like cap tubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right now that I can see. I just figured I could cover a couple. So there's some gone already. This one's one of them. So I'm just gonna kind of figure out a way to refine the fitment here, maybe roll this area. The next phase for this thing is going to be a radius windshield. So instead of just like a flat piece of glass with like a big gasket where you kind of see like a surface change or a raise around the glass, this will be a flush radius windshield, very similar to the black car that I did up here, and also a roof scoop and we'll call it a hood mohawk or a hood hawk or a hood cowl or something. The main source of cooling through here is right through the occupant's viewing area or windshield area. So when we put glass in here, it's inevitable that the cooling is going to kind of go down. So right off the bat, that gives us the door to make a functional roof scoop. This tin that's already up here is very thin and jagged and just kind of a additional thing that the client put on there just so he could have it. I don't know if it came with one before. So he's already asked me to redo that, and that will lend itself to a really beautiful shape of roof scoop that I'll also build. This portion we'll talk about, but the goal here is to make everything complement itself. So you have a very angular Truggy layout here. The only bend that I can see is the rear bumper and this front tube layout here. So you got to kind of pick your battles and figure out what how much angle versus round, and it's just design, having good design. So that radius windshield is going to be something that's going to add a crazy design element, and we'll kind of frame it here. It'll be a removable frame. The glass will be glued in with, like the thick adhesive that they would do just a normal car windshield. It's usually got some play in it, but we're going to get that glass. We're going to get it custom, find the right car that has a suitable shape, and then trim it down on each side to where it'll fit for this, and make a couple of them right off the bat, just in case one gets cracked, sooner than later. And then we'll have a template too. So if these ever need to be replaced, you do have to have a glass guy that can cut it, and that's that. But the finished product is unmatched with an application like that. What we'll do with the windshield application, I took some pictures already, and I want to at least sketch out just kind of this general radius and get some new pictures with the reskin on there, and then get them in the computer and start really figuring out a good shape, what the spread's going to be like. So you know, if we have this windshield is it's gonna come out, right? Because this is just all a flat plane. So the windshield, it'll have a frame here. It'll be a couple inches, and then it'll have its frame and it'll radius. So it'll kind of go over the engine. And it'll also radius up here. So I'm gonna have to have like a 3-dimensional frame that bolts on or a quarter turn fastens. I think with the windshield program, we might wanna run a heavier fastener program that doesn't let it move as much. And I'll kind of evaluate that when we get there. But that being said, want to look at the shapes here, what the width looks like. You know, we want maximum flow back there, but we do want some functional shape into it. So, you know, I imagine right off the bat that it'll start wide and it'll kind of taper, and that makes the most sense to me. Figure out the width of the cooler area back there and what they require and what they're asking for air, and then just have a flat surface and go up, go across, and then we'll have a kind of a taper back. And the actual airflow, it won't go like the you know, the plane, the profile of the top of the car where it goes down in the back at your B-pillar. This scoop is not gonna like keep going past it. It'll dive right on that B-pillar tube that goes across the chassis. It'll dive down. So your airflow is actually gonna go like kind of over your head if you're in the car. I'm totally confident in that being enough air for what it needs. We also have the ventilation back there, so it's actually gonna make kind of a draw, if you will. There'll be positive flow and then there'll be flow coming out. That's gonna kind of sum up our roof scoop area. So there's window nets here. There's nothing wrong with these. They're tried and proven. But I think for like this theme of doing an update, but still keeping it like a Truggy where it's not like just crazy voluptuous, big in-your-face shapes, we delete the A-pillar area, the secondary A-pillar to main A-pillar like window net, and we put Lexan in here. Possibly tint it, see if he has like this thing came with all black panels, so I don't know if he has a complementary color, or maybe ask what his kid's favorite color is or something, and tint just this piece in here, and just get rid of the window net altogether. The rear portion here of the back wall, the B-pillar wall, we're gonna do a big panel with ventilation, same thing, so we'll have like a complementary shape here that helps for the cooling and kind of gives a protective barrier. So, you know, same thing as like the outside. So aluminum with like a woven mesh, stainless mesh. The last portion of this thing that we want to address right now is going to be the hood cowl, or like the skin or treatment towards the front. So let's cover that too. You gotta put your Imagineering goggles on here. Imagine a windshield, imagine a roof scoop, so like a profile shape that's kind of like a trapezoid shape towards the middle there. And then we have this section. So this is the last appointment, I think, that this car, that'll kind of encapsulate the whole car. We don't need to close all this off. It's a Truggy, so like having that balance of like raw tube work and kind of almost like skinned muscle of the car, where it's not a body on here, it's a very functional, just a skinned form, is what we want to keep alive with all the language of the design. So that being said, like right off the bat, what I see here, these hoses will be something we have to clock. We'll just make sure we clock them in a way that's not going to need them to be rebuilt. And I think tailoring to the point of this X here is the dialed shape. So not covering any of this chassis. So from like the shock mounts inward, we'll have skin, but from the shock mounts out towards the bump, like this whole rail and the bump stop and everything, we'll leave this open, and it'll be a really nice breakup of space versus skin. And I think having this thing kind of cowl up, be a really pretty shape to kind of have a center line here. And I don't know if it dips down or maybe it's just a simple cowl and it goes right up to the windshield. So we do need to have the windshield frame in and figure out where that radius is. Soon as that's in, then we can make like a nice, simple kind of shape here that just complements everything. Maybe like a nice deep step bead roll in the top to kind of break the shape up and break the surfacing up. That should kind of solidify this thing. So there's a weird thing I have with a lot of this stuff where, you know, if I'm really interested in something, it almost draws itself towards me and towards the shop. And Truggies are like one of those things where when I was younger, the Landshark was like this epic Truggy, which was built by Mike Smith, you know, at Terrible Herps. And there was also the Baja Shop Truggies, which were like really memorable when I was younger. I used to go to MDR races and watch those things. I think they did Laughlin stuff a couple times, and I would see them at Glamis. But I think there's something to be said about like a live axle rear, front engine, simplified, not a full trophy truck, just like just a bare bones machine. I love it, and it's cool to have the opportunity to take something that's older and, you know, give it like a refresh or give it our own style. And it's kind of a reoccurring thing that we do with things. And this Truggy thing is just the beginning, where I have some plans as far as developing a platform that's going to be very similar but modern. So I'm excited to kind of see the future. I'm also excited to get started on the windshield, so stay tuned. Again, if you guys have anything that you want to see in particular, we do take notes. We do have a list of everything we're going to cover, so comment. And on top of that, I need you to like and subscribe. I can either go, like and subscribe, dude, or I can just tell you, please like and subscribe. It'll help us out. It supports us. It keeps things going at full steam. So thank you.